Good evening to you from our studios in Caracas, Venezuela. My name is Regan Devines. A look at this evening's headlines. A disappointing result for Argentina's left as candidates must now prepare for a runoff election. Colombia remains under the governance of the right as weekend polls reveal the results. And hundreds die in Asia's massive earthquake. The details on these stories and more now on From the South. Argentina is in for an interesting month, politically speaking, after results from Sunday's presidential election showed the conservative opposition candidate, Mauricio Macri, outperforming expectations and forcing a second round of voting for November 22nd. Supporters in the camp of Daniel Scioli, the ruling party candidate, were shocked and visibly disappointed as the first results came in, showing that he would not win in the first round and faces a tough battle in the next month to win the second round. With over 97% of the votes counted, Scioli has 37% and Macri 34%. Although the presidential race was disappointing for the ruling party, they will still dominate in the Senate. And a debate between Scioli and Macri is set for November 15th, which will be held at the Law Faculty of the University of Buenos Aires. It will be available on free-to-air. Scioli refused to attend the last debate, saying he did not want to get involved in mudslinging matches. After the surprising result, the development model of the Kirchner government to secure a better future for the country.
Dos visiones distintas, espacios políticos con otras prioridades, interpretando también que en el marco de la mayor demanda ciudadanas, muchas veces la palabra cambio puede ser muy atractiva, pero siento que
there are two distinct visions, political spaces with other priorities, interpreted also in the key demands of the citizens. Many times the word change can be very attractive, but I also feel that we need to give it a deep discussion. What type of change do we Argentines have? I know that we have to take care of, maintain, and also fundamentally continue with the agenda of social development, prioritizing, and I repeat, Argentine work, national industry, and getting out of debt, the nationalization of YPF, energy sovereignty, infrastructure development. The logistics for this, I feel that this election on November 22nd is a lot more than the confrontation in the political space between the Front for Victory and Cambiemos. This is why I call on Argentinians to keep an active social...
Scioli has also called on voters of third-place Massa to vote for him, saying that his political vision was much closer to theirs than that of Macri.
The New Front voter from Massa's party is much further from Macri than from us. Their vision of the country, the progressive and socialist votes, are much further from Macri than from the ideas that I hold. Adolfo Rodriguez Sá's thoughts and main ideas about federalism are much further from Macri than from us. The problem is his, not ours.
The conservative candidate, Mauricio Macri, is almost neck and neck with Scioli as the final votes trickle in. He was able to woo large sections of the middle class and some of the poor who previously voted for Cristina Fernandez.
We promise you jobs. We promise you the dedication to win your trust, to show you that you're making the right decision. Argentina needs a change.
Macri called on all the Argentines who voted for other candidates to place their faith in him over Daniel Scioli.
Decirles a los que votaron a Sergio Massa, Adolfo Rodríguez Sá, Margarita Stolbizer, a Nicolás del Caño y aún muchos...
I say to those who voted for Sergio Massa, and although many voted for Daniel Scioli, we are here to represent them. We are here with humility, with responsibility, with a deep vocation to get things done. We want to go on constructing concrete solutions so that Argentinians can live better. And we ask that you come with us. We ask that you trust us. We have a lot of hope.
The other surprise was the loss of the province of Buenos Aires, normally a perilous stronghold. Macri's former mayoral running mate, Maria Vidal, beat Aníbal Fernandez, one of Cristina Fernandez's right-hand men.
Without the impact of Maria Vidal, Macri would hardly have not had the result on the national level. I say it's like a wave from the Buenos Aires province, which unleashed a national political effect.
Colombia also held elections this Sunday. In this case, they were regional and local polls to elect governors of the 32 state departments, local councillors, members of the regional assemblies, and mayors. After 12 years of rule by the left, Colombia's capital, Bogotá, will again be governed by the center-right. Former Mayor Enrique Peñalosa, who was Bogotá's mayor 15 years ago, won with over 33% of the votes. In second place was Rafael Pardo with 28%, while Clara Lopez of the left-wing Democratic pool came third with 18%.
Today, I want to send a message to so many citizens and so many young people who have a dream, who may have failed over and over. If you have a passion, you must persist and pursue your dreams. Work hard for that dream. No, zero presidency. I'm only interested in being mayor with all my heart, and only that.
The left candidate, Clara Lopez, recognized Peñalosa's victory, but accused the media of running a dirty campaign against her.
The media's behavior and their monopoly on the polls had a serious and negative effect on the capital's democracy. So I demand integrity. There has never been such a filthy campaign against a woman in any part of the world.
The results are very positive for the government coalition. It's a coalition which, even though it's divided in the sense that Radical Change, the party of Vice President Vargas Lleras, has been strengthened in these elections, the coalition has held together. This is important for the peace process, not only because the coalition is going to continue to support the national government's negotiating efforts, but also because a lot of mayors from this coalition, in particular those from Radical Change, who were the big winners in these elections, will be key in the implementation of the peace accords that will be reached with the FARC.
Peace is the logical outcome to have justice, reparations, and truth. We hope that a mayor as important as the one who was just elected in Bogotá puts in his 2 cents and actively participates in the political decisions surrounding compensation to the victims.
Moving to Haiti, the vote count continues after locals went to the polls on Sunday. There was a large turnout and no major incidents compared to the first round of legislative elections back in August, when 2 people were killed. People stood in long lines outside the polling stations on Sunday, something that had not happened in more than a decade. Around 400 people were still working this Monday in a counting center in the capital, Port-au-Prince, receiving tally sheets from across the country. The final results are expected in 10 days. And presidential elections also took place in Guatemala. Comedian turned politician Jimmy Morales of the National Convergence Front swept the elections with close to 70% of the vote. His election win comes as the former president Otto Perez Molina and his former vice president Roxana Baldetti are in jail, accused of corruption. Morales says that he will represent all Guatemalans, including those who live outside the country. However, the turnout was down sharply compared with the first round.
From the presidency, I will be able to serve 15 million of Guatemalans inside the national territory and 2 million in the United States, who also supported us on this occasion.
Morales' contender Sandra Torres also recognized Jimmy Morales' triumph.
I am and always will be a Democrat. We recognize Mr. Jimmy Morales' victory, and we wish him success for the sake of Guatemala. As always, we offer our constructive support for the sake of the country, since the current situation is a very complex one, which will need important agreements to move on. Guatemala has serious problems, but the people have made its choice, which we respect, and we wish Mr. Morales the best of success.
Participation was especially low in many of Guatemala's indigenous communities. Telesur's cameras visited the community of Pueblo Nuevo in Ixcan Quiche, where only just over 1,000 people voted in the second round. In the first round of the elections, more than 4,000 members of the community had turned out to vote. Many residents said they did not feel represented by any of the candidates.
No, of course. A government elected by a minority has no legitimacy. How can it? It's as if there were 100 of us and just 10 of us elect the head of the community. It's not right. There should be at least 60 people who decide who will lead the community.
Whoever wins, they are all the same. They only benefit the rich. This country will never change until an indigenous person, a campesino, is elected to govern.
Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro reaffirmed his commitment to respect the results of the parliamentary elections that will be held on December 6th. The Venezuelan head of state made the announcement from the Venezuelan Electoral Council with the president of that council, Tibisay Lucena. Earlier this month, Maduro asked the electoral body to put forward a document asking all political organizations to respect the election result.
I have come to sign for millions of men and women of our country who want peace, to respect the Electoral Commission, and that we know the tremendous advances of the electoral system that has allowed us to put forward our will like never before in the history of this country in the last 17 years.
The Foreign Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dennis Moses, met with Alexander Yan joint energy projects. The representatives signed energy, security and cultural agreements between the neighboring countries, which have traditionally been distanced from each other in political terms. Parents and relatives of the 43 Ayotzinapa students commemorated this Monday, 13 months after their disappearance. Under the motto, "Alive they were taken, alive we want them," the relatives reiterated that they will continue their struggle for justice and truth. They added that the government's attempt to, quote, "bid for oblivion" has failed. In the evening, they marched to remember the attack committed against their loved ones. And coming up after the break, Russia continues its airstrikes on Syria as thousands of refugees are continually being forced from their homes. This and more as From the South continues.
The world is divided among continents and nations. Nations are divided by borders and interests. These interests divide the news. We examine the impact of these divisions on people and power. This is Imaginary Lines. Watch it on telesurtv.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there. A world infinitely connected. Millions of people instantaneously interacting. Experiences relayed in 144 characters. Millions of lives in every corner of the planet. They're not tweets, they're stories. Watch it on telesurtv.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there. Rod stars G1 and Claudia de la Cruz are Rebel Diaz, hip-hop activists positioned within a history of political resistance through music. And you don't stop. They invite young people to express themselves about their social struggles. And you don't stop. Watch it on telesurtv.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there.
In southern Asia, over 300 people have been confirmed killed, mostly in Pakistan, as a result of the 7.5 magnitude earthquake that struck Afghanistan and northern Pakistan. Besides the aftershocks, rescue and relief works are complicated due to the security threats by the Taliban insurgency in Afghanistan. Hundreds of houses have been destroyed, creating additional hardship with cold weather setting in. Shockwaves were reported to have reached as far as New Delhi in India. The death toll is set to rise as the most severely affected areas are very remote and communications have been cut off. The Russian Defense Ministry says its planes have flown 164 sorties and struck 285 Islamic State and Jabhat al-Nusra militant targets in Syria in the last 3 days. The strikes focused on the Hama, Idlib, Latakia, Damascus, Aleppo and Deir az-Zor provinces. Since Russia's campaign to assist the Assad regime began on September 30th, they say they have destroyed more than 800 terrorist targets in Syria. And on the ground, Syrian army troops say they have retaken a number of strategic positions south of Damascus, close to the border with Israel. Reports are that the troops have even forced the al-Nusra Front militants to retreat past certain villages. Their next line of attack is set to focus on reclaiming positions in the south. And the Syrian internal conflict continues, causing thousands of refugees to be forced from their homes. Our Syria correspondent Hazem Abdullah hears from persons at a refugee camp in Damascus.
In the distance, you can hear the sound of the shells being fired in this long internal war. The fighting continues, and the Syrian people are paying the price. The UN estimates that over 7.5 million people are internally displaced across the country. They have had to flee their homes, leaving all they knew behind. Some have found their way to refugee centers, like this one in Damascus.
The terrorists forced us to leave our home. What was even sadder was to see the children while they were fleeing. Some of us lost our children. Others were misplaced on the road. We have to thank the Syrian government, which found us shelter.
Thousands of refugees have made the dangerous journey across the Mediterranean toward Europe. They have fled the death and destruction in Syria, both by the militants backed by Arab allies such as Saudi Arabia and Qatar, who are no longer ashamed of showing their public support for these fighting against the Syrian government. In spite of it all, the government continues to do all it can to ensure the safety of Syrian citizens with the help of a few friendly countries.
All of this that has happened to us is because of the West, the displacement and fragmentation, and the rampant death. We are with Syria, led by President Bashar al-Assad, because before the West intervened in our country, we were living in a paradise called Syria.
In spite of all this suffering, the Syrians are continuing on their way to recover their country from terror. In a clear message, that's on this earth what makes life worth living. Hazem Abdullah, Tirisul, Syria.
70 Iraqi captives were freed just before coalition forces bombed an Islamic State prison in Iraq. That's according to the U.S. authorities, which also reported the death of an American soldier in the mission. The U.S. released a video which they say shows the actual attack on the prison, located about 4 miles north of the town of Harija. The coalition operation included Peshmerga Special Forces as well as U.S. forces. Reports are that 3 Iraqi Special Operations officers were also wounded during the mission. Reports are that some 34,000 soldiers, including 6,000 UN peacekeepers, were on patrol during Sunday's elections in Ivory Coast. Incumbent President Alassane Ouattara has been tipped with the winner, yet hopes to avoid a runoff election. He vowed to turn around Ivory Coast's economy and assured stability after years of turmoil. The 2010 elections, which saw Ouattara become president, was particularly violent. More than 3,000 people had died. The European Commission's Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis met with Greece's finance and economy ministers to urge the country to quickly implement the reforms agreed with its international lenders in the multi-billion-dollar bailout package. He added that Greece was on the right track in its cooperation with its lenders.
The successful completion of the first program review will be a very important step in this direction. It will also help to boost confidence in the Greek economy and to restore financial stability in.
Meanwhile, pharmacists in Greece demonstrated peacefully outside the office of Athens' Ministry of Health. The medical practitioners protested against the new bailout measures that limit the role of pharmacies and would permit persons without a degree to open one. They promised to hold a 24-hour strike until their demands were met, the rescinding of the law. as part of a 17-point plan agreed to by the European Union and the Balkan leaders to manage the flow of migrants through the Balkan Peninsula. The European Union's border control agency, Frontex, will substantially increase its number of border guards to deal with the crisis. The organization said that it is strengthening the number of officers who are dealing with registration and identification of refugees. They will also extend and expand operations in Bulgaria, but there's going to be an operation at the other borders of Greece, Greece with Macedonia, Greece with Albania, and also the extension of an operation in Croatia.
Well, we are strengthening existing operations, Operation Poseidon in the Aegean Sea in Greece, in particular strengthening the number of officers who are dealing with registration, identification of migrants. And we are also extending and expanding operations in Bulgaria, but there's going to be an operation at the other borders of Greece, Macedonia, Greece with Albania, and also extending an operation in Croatia.
A refugee shelter in Lampertheim, Germany, had to be evacuated after assailants reportedly broke in with the intention of burning the building to the ground. A fire was started inside, leaving the structure and its contents badly damaged. 49 people were evacuated and no one was injured. Germany's Interior Ministry reported that as at the end of October this year, there have been 490 attacks on refugee shelters in that country. More than 10,000 people in the United States have been killed by a firearm in 2015. 582 of these have been children 11 years old or younger. Here is Bianca Perez with more on this story.
A group of concerned citizens who advocate for stricter gun laws in the United States gathered outside the White House to ask Congress and the U.S. government to make changes in the current gun laws.
We need to tighten up the incredibly lax gun laws in certain states, which means somebody can go to that state, buy a gun, and bring it back to Chicago, say, or anywhere where the restrictions are a little higher. We need a universal background check system that works, and we need to get it together, America.
There have been nearly 300 mass shootings in the United States thus far in 2015. This increase in mass shootings in recent years has left citizens wondering when Congress will take definitive action.
After the Newtown shootings, we were all very hopeful that there would be a change in legislation. I mean, 20 young children shot, and that didn't do it. So it's hard to know what will do it, except that if we become more vocal as a nation.
92% of U.S. citizens agree that there need to be more strict background checks and that national laws must be implemented by Congress that will make the country safer.
There's ways to regulate guns, much like we regulate lots of other things in our country, for safety reasons. And we haven't gone far enough. Not yet. And until we do, my children are still going to have to practice dangerous persons drills at school.
5% of authorized gun retailers do not follow the requirements to sell firearms. This percentage is the cause of 90% of the deaths that occur in the U.S. Bianca Perez, Telesur, Washington, D.C.
October 26th is YITZHAK RABIN Memorial Day, the day commemorating the murder of the former Israeli Prime Minister, who died at the hands of right-wing extremists who had conspired to derail the 1993 Oslo Accords that Rabin forged with the Palestinians. The day reminds many of the hope for peace between Israelis and Palestinians, a hope that some say they no longer have. Ukraine will receive a $1 billion loan from the United States that will serve to attract foreign investments to the country. U.S. Secretary of Commerce Penny Pritzker visited Kiev to meet with Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko, who accepted the loan. And now a brief look at other stories making news around the world.
2 pro-government fighters died in Yemen after a bomber wearing a suicide belt detonated the explosives. The incident occurred at a checkpoint in Yemen's port city of Aden. Reports are that Islamic militant group AL-QAIDA, blamed for the attack, currently hold control of several areas in Aden. An area in the ocean called the Twilight Zone is where marine scientists are hoping to learn more about climate change. They created a device called a pelagic Nagarian sediment trap, which captures the activities of organisms at a certain depth in the Twilight Zone. Experts from the World Health Organization now saying that eating processed meat can cause bowel cancer in humans, while red meat is a likely cause of the disease. Meanwhile, health experts are not convinced that WHO's findings would help curb the consumption of such products.
Processed meat has been classified as carcinogenic along with other well-known substances, including tobacco smoking and asbestos, even air pollution. But it's important to recognize that those classifications relate to the strength of scientific evidence for carcinogenicity and not to the level of risk. So even though they're all in the same category, the level of risk for tobacco smoking, say, is much larger than the risk associated with eating meat, 10 times larger than the risk for processed meat, for example.
And 5 British citizens were killed when a whale-watching boat sank off the coast of Western Canada on Sunday. Officials say that 21 people were rescued while 1 person remains missing. Investigations are ongoing as the cause of the accident remains unknown, and sea conditions at the time of the incident were reported to be calm.
One more candidate is in the running for the FIFA presidency, and he joins the lineup. This time it's UEFA's General Secretary Gianni Infantino, and he's got the full support of UEFA's Executive Committee. Infantino is a Swiss-born lawyer and has been working with Michel Platini at UEFA for the past 9 years. UEFA released a statement saying that, quote, Infantino has all of the qualities required to tackle the major challenges ahead and to lead the organization on a path of reform to restore FIFA's integrity and credibility, end quote. Hundreds of people took to the streets in Mexico City on Sunday to take part in the Day of the Dead March. Many of the participants dressed up as Katrina, a cartoon character that has become part of the Mexican culture during the Day of the Dead celebrations. The holiday is how Mexicans remember and honor their deceased loved ones and is celebrated between October 31st and November 2nd. And to close this evening, if you like flash mobs, then picture one with zombies. Over the weekend, some 200 zombies took part in a flash mob for charity. It's called the Thrill the World charity fundraising event, all to raise funds for several children's charities. This one here occurred in Covent Gardens in London, England, and the zombies still all danced to the music of Michael Jackson's Thriller. So great to end on a zombie note. Remember, there is more on these and other stories on our website, telesurtv.net/English. From our news teams in Quito, Ecuador, and right here in Caracas, Venezuela, my name is Reagan Devines. Have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow.